I would say to try to be as prepared for your trip as you can be. Things will go wrong, so try to just have some things in line. Have some warm clothes, have a warm sleeping bag, and have a first aid kit.
Don't wait. You never know when life's going to happen to you, so when you have the opportunity, seize it.
And I said it before, but I'll say it again. You don't need an expensive bike to take a bike tour.
And you don't pass an espresso stand without stopping.
Hi folks, my name is Chris and I'm the artist and co-founder at Explorer Maps.
Hi, this is Vanessa, Chris's wife. I have been a #1 fan of Chris's art since I first met him in the late 1990s. Which map will you get to help you treasure your own special times? Please be sure to use the promo code Mandela for a discount when you visit explorermaps.com.
Welcome to the Trail Less Traveled, an adventure radio series and podcast dedicated to collecting stories and sounds from around the world in order to take you back to mankind's earliest form of entertainment, storytelling. This episode was recorded on location in collaboration with Explorer Maps. Missoula, Montana is a mecca for outdoor enthusiasts, and each week we will bring you tales of adventure from both near and far, as well as information and inspiration and a few tunes to set the mood. You can subscribe to the podcast and learn about our international outreach projects at traillesstraveled.net. And now, here's your host, international expedition guide, conservationist, and yogi, Mandela.
We are recording on location on the edge of the Clark Fork River, next to the footbridge, behind Big Sky Bikes. We are here sitting with Sarah Ross and Josh Tack. These guys are both lovers of cats and coffee. They live here in Missoula, Montana, but they spend a lot of time traveling the world. In particular, they travel the world on a bicycle, and Sarah loves cappuccinos, so she spends a lot of her time when she's riding just looking for that perfect cappuccino. Josh rides for the Big Sky Bikes team, and he also works at Adventure Cycling. So thank you guys so much once again for joining me here on location behind Big Sky Bikes to talk about your rides. For those who didn't catch your show last week, could you tell us a little bit more about where you grew up and how outdoor adventure was part of your childhood?
Yeah, so I grew up on a commune in Southern Virginia. I was born in kind of a group housing setting, and then as I got to be a little bit older, my parents and I moved into a school bus. So I kind of grew up indoors and outdoors. I would say we were always kind of looking for firewood, gathering water, doing the things that you do on a camping trip, but for our house. So I feel like outdoor adventure was kind of always a part of my life. As I mentioned before, there was a time in my teenage years when I really moved away from that kind of life. I wanted to be like what I thought was normal and fit in, and I really wished that I didn't have that kind of childhood. But when I got to be a little bit older, I was glad that I had that childhood, and I really respected my parents for making the choices that they did. I moved back towards it, and I think that if it hadn't been for the way I was raised, I wouldn't feel comfortable maybe camping for 6 months out of the year, and I wouldn't feel the way that I do about now. I feel like I am never as comfortable as when I'm camping. I never feel as at home as when I am lying on the ground.
And I grew up in Iowa City, Iowa. Wasn't necessarily an outdoor mecca, but it was a college town, so not too different from Missoula, just surrounded by cornfields instead of mountains. My outdoor experiences, tough to come by, some trips to the Boundary Waters, but my mom did get me out on a ride across Iowa called Ragbri a couple years, which kind of opened my eyes to adventure and bicycle travel. But it's a ride where you start on the west side of the state and dip your rear wheel in the Missouri River, and then you ride on over to the east side of the state over the course of a week, and then dip your front wheel in the Mississippi when you're done. And so that's what got me rolling on two wheels.
Last week we spoke to Josh and Sarah about their 5-week tour around Peru. Now we're going to speak to them about riding along the Pacific coast of Mexico. I'd like to know more about that, how long that trip was, what time of year you did it, how it differed from Peru. Let's go to the Pacific coast of Mexico.
So this trip was in 2008 or 9, so it was maybe only a year or two after Peru. We really wanted a trip where we could spend some time on the beach. It was December. We were actually there over Christmas. And so we started in Acapulco, and there's a coastal road that just goes down to Puerto Angel in the Oaxaca state, and probably spent 3 weeks riding down the coast, and then we spent a week riding up the mountains over to Oaxaca City, which is where we flew out. But it was a great time. No, it was ocean, beaches, and then a brief stint to mountains, so felt like a complete trip. And then to be in Mexico over Christmas was incredible. I mean, they're incredibly festive, and it seemed like the whole week there was events going on, and it was a great time to be there.
Christmas in Mexico was so fun. Like, I remember one of my favorite memories were all the parades, and it's just so funny because I guess I just always equate Christmas with snow, and so to be in a beach town with a Christmas parade and have like all the children dressed up as like angels and have them be sweating profusely, it just seemed like so funny to me for some reason. But that was another example of like a time when people said like, oh, that's a really dangerous place, you shouldn't go there, and we were met with like nothing but the most hospitality, like such generosity. The roads were so safe. People gave us the widest berth. We just loved like hanging out on the beach. The food was amazing. So many kinds of cheese. I've like never had so many kinds of cheese. It was delicious. It was freezing that winter in Montana, and we were just like basking in the sunshine. It was the best. We were not riding a bike on a literal beach. We were riding a bike on the road by the side of the beach. So we were riding road bikes, basically. We were riding touring bikes, so they had tread, but on a road. On another trip, when we were riding in Baja, we rode mountain bikes on the beach, and I know exactly what you mean. It led to a lot of swearing. But on this case, we were riding on a road by the beach, and so it was not that bad.
Yeah, there were times you'd ride through a section of road and you're just pushing through it, getting blasted by sand, and other times it would just be completely hard packed, just like any of the forest roads around Missoula, where you could just cruise right along. So yeah, from what we heard from people, based on the wind, based on even the rivers that would lead into the ocean, sometimes they'd push rock and gravel over the roads, and you'd run into some problems there.
Let's talk a little bit about form when riding.
Yeah, so core strength is really important when you're riding, and I have trouble with that. I've been working on that too. I have trouble with a lot of things on my bike, and I think that it has a lot to do with being a woman and a lot of bike frames being built for men. I am constantly trying new things on my bikes, new saddles, new bar height, new this. And eventually the one thing that really, really helped me was getting a bike fit. So I would really suggest that. I do think that things like core strength can be really helpful, not hunching over a ton. I wouldn't recommend a lot of people wear really heavy backpacks when they ride. I would recommend trying to keep a lot of weight off your back, but I would recommend, if possible, if it's something you can try to do and you're a woman, getting a woman-specific bike if that is something that feels good to you, and then also getting a bike fit if you're going to do a really long trip.
Yeah, you can't stress bike fit enough. Also, your pedal cadence can go a long ways in as far as how comfortable you're going to be. If you're pushing too hard of a gear, you'll tend to be more tense, not just in your legs, but your shoulders, your arms, everywhere. That might be fine for an hour ride, but if you're going to be out there for half a day just kind of cruising along, if you can shift down to lower gear and just speed up your cadence, that can go a long way. Just staying relaxed, staying loose, and then taking breaks. I mean, we take tons and tons of breaks. You see something you want to see, I mean, stop and check it out. And just those little breaks can go a long ways in helping everything stay fresh.
I'd like to talk to you guys about some of the road conditions in the places that you've ridden.
Yeah, I think when you're on paved roads, especially narrow roads where there's going to be some truck traffic or car traffic, it's good to ride single file. You don't want to take up the whole road. If people need to get around you, you want to give them plenty of space, especially when there's oncoming traffic. Sometimes they come up on you quicker than they'd like to, and you just want to make sure they've got room to maneuver around you. So riding single file. And then nice thing about bicycle touring is we've got packs, and Sarah, you hauled a trailer. So with all that gear, I mean, it makes you pretty visible when you're packed up like that. So, but yeah, staying visible for sure helps too.
I will say too, for Mexico, bike tourists are really kind of an anomaly, and it is just this thing where people see you and it's like, that's crazy. And so it's like people tend to be like, they'll get out of your way, you know, because they're just like, holy crap, what is that? And so I feel like maybe we've just been really lucky, but people tend to give us a really wide berth and be really like, oh my gosh, because they're just like so surprised to see you on the road, you know. We did have a time when we were in Baja, we flew into Cabo, and coming out of Cabo, there was a lot of road construction and it was super duper busy, and we were like, oh my gosh, this is a freaking nightmare. And people just gave us tons of room, and it was like not the greatest situation, but it was fine.
You're listening to The Trail Less Traveled, the community source for adventure information and inspiration on the Trail 1033. We are recording at Big Sky Bikes, right next to the Clark Fork River. And looking inside, I'm seeing a lot of mountain bikes, cyclocross bikes, racing bikes, touring bikes. I'm wondering about technology in the biking world and how it's changed, and maybe some of the changes that you guys really embrace, and some of the ones that maybe you like the old ways a little bit more.
I think the biggest change in bikes is just how many bikes there are. I mean, equipment's changed for sure with disc brakes. I mean, you've seen disc brakes on road bikes now. It used to be just mountain bikes, and I don't know, 20 years ago you didn't see disc brakes on mountain bikes, but now they're everywhere. But just the variety of bikes that you see now is incredible. I mean, you've got road bikes, you have comfort road bikes, you have mountain bikes, hardtails, dual suspension, fat bikes, gravel bikes, cyclocross bikes. You can pretty much just decide what kind of riding you want to do, and there's going to be a bike specifically tailored to it. So I think that's pretty incredible. But yeah, at the end of the day, you're pushing a chain that's moving a wheel, and wheel sizes actually, come to think of it, yeah, have changed too. The 26-inch mountain bikes long gone, and has made way for 2.9ers and 27.5 wheel sizes, so which kind of goes back to the variety of bikes there are. So I'd say that's huge. I like all bikes, and it's a real problem. It goes back to that addictive personality we talked about. So man, yeah. If you're going to ask me which kind of bike I would prefer over the other, I've got pretty much all those bikes in the garage right now. And so it's hard to say which one I enjoy the most. It depends on the day. It's nice to have variety in life, so I try to give my life variety.
One thing that I've really noticed for bike touring in the past couple of years is the bike packing phenomenon. It used to be that people really just carried their bike stuff on panniers, and then there was the bob trailer, there was the trailer, and now there's a real movement towards people carrying their gear in bike bags. So carrying their gear, lighter gear, less gear, and having it in bike bags, like frame bags, and just carrying it on their bikes and then like under their seat and in a backpack. That's really kind of all been within the last few years, and it's a really new phenomenon. You can go a lot faster. You don't have like as much wideness to your bike. You can go on trails. It's a lot easier to travel on trails, and it is just, yeah, it's a lot easier. It's kind of like ultralight backpacking for cyclists. So that's a really new thing, and I've noticed it.
Sarah and Josh have ridden bicycles all over the world. We have spoken to them about riding in Mexico, in Peru. Now I'm going to talk to these guys about a ride that they did in 2012 where they rode from Alaska to Mexico. And I think this is brilliant. Okay, these guys did this ride before they got married. They did end up getting married, and then after that they rode all over Spain, and they have many more rides to come in their lifetime. So I'd love for you guys to take us on this long bike tour that was a total of over 5,000 miles.
To do this trip from Alaska to Mexico, I think first step was you got to quit your job. There's not many places that are going to let you take 6 months off for a bike trip. So we unfortunately had to do that. Fortunately, it led to the trip of a lifetime for us. We started up in Fairbanks, Alaska. Goes to show what you can do on a mountain bike, I think, because the first half of the trip, it was all pavement. We just rode highway from Fairbanks, Alaska to Banff, Canada, threw some skinny tires on our mountain bikes and did that section. And then Banff, Canada to Mexico, there's a bicycle route called the Great Divide Mountain Bike Route. Links up forest roads, county roads, a lot of dirt roads, a little bit of single track trail from Banff, Canada to Antelope Wells, New Mexico, which is the border crossing in New Mexico.
So we started that trip and it was May. And we knew that we had 5 months or however long. We didn't have a job. And we wanted to do it on $10 per person per day. So we knew that we wouldn't stay in any hotels and we wouldn't really go out to eat very much. And I remember thinking after 2 weeks, I was like, holy crap, we have a long way to go. I didn't really train a lot for the trip. It was winter here, and we had to carry in Alaska sometimes a lot of food. There weren't a lot of grocery stores in between. And at the end of the day, we would ride for like 50 miles a day or whatever, sometimes less. We would set up our tent and I would just go to sleep. It would be like 4 o'clock and I would just go to sleep. There's that term, ride yourself into shape. And that's what we did. We just rode into shape. And then we kept going. And after a while, it just got really fun. And it felt like we were just going to do it forever.
You mentioned that you were on mountain bikes, but you had skinny tires. Was that just for the first part of the trip and then you changed your tires?
Yeah, the first part of the trip, pretty much the first 500 miles, 3,000 miles, was on skinny tires. Then once we got to Banff, we switched out to wider mountain bike tires for the rest of the duration of the trip. 2,500 miles on a bike is kind of a good place to start swapping things like tires, changing cassettes out. So it was kind of a good place to take a little bit of a break, give the bike some attention, and then carry on.
You guys were on the Great Divide Mountain Bike Trail. In detail, could you paint the picture of that trail for us?
Yeah, so it's actually adventure cycling where I work right now. It's we have maps for the route. It starts up in Banff. It kind of parallels the Continental Divide Trail, the more popular hiking trail. But since the Continental Divide Trail is a lot of wilderness, bicycles aren't allowed on those trails. It kind of keeps you on the dirt roads below that. And also, it's a little bit more user-friendly, being that you are on roads, so you're not riding up extremely steep single track or descending down anything scary. I mean, you're carrying all your gear. You want to keep things a little bit realistic. But yeah, it travels through Canada, crosses Roosevelt border crossing, then you drop down to Eureka. Through Montana, you'll visit Whitefish, Seeley Lake, Helena, and Butte. And then you make your way a little bit through Idaho, Wyoming. Through Wyoming, you got to make your way through Great Basin, which is a tough desert-like stretch. Colorado, get the high Rockies, and then you're into New Mexico. You get the mountains and the desert of New Mexico, and then you're right at the border, which Antelope Wells border crossing is the middle of nowhere, so you better be prepared to turn around and ride yourself out of it when you get there.
Yeah, when we got to Antelope Wells, it's like, hooray, we're at the end, But then it's like, well, here we are. The people at the border crossing are super nice. They're like really excited because people finish there, and it's exciting for them. And they gave us an ice cream sandwich, which was really nice. And then we're like, sweet. So then we rode to Tucson and got a plane home. But yeah, Adventure cycling has great maps for it. It's awesome. And it has like where stores are and where you can camp. But you can also like really camp just about anywhere, which is the best. Like Alaska is great for camping because you can camp wherever you want in Alaska because there's nobody there. And then Canada can be like a little bit tricky because it just feels like you don't want to get in trouble in Canada because you're not a citizen. But the Great Divide is awesome. You can camp wherever you want, and it's just like really wide open, and it feels like really comfortable. So it's a really great trail.
I'd like to just have a couple of tips that are specific towards riding on the Great Divide mountain bike trail.
Well, for me, I would say I would like to have a bike with front suspension because the road is really, like a lot of the roads are very, very washboardy, and my wrists got super, super tired from all of the washboard. So Josh did not have a bike with front suspension, and I don't think he really minded that much, but I really liked having that front suspension.
No, I did mind it. I think the only flat I got on the Great Divide was a pinch flat from the washboard roads. I think we were calling it the Great Washboard Divide at some point. One thing to keep in mind with the Great Divide route is that you feel like you're out there, like middle of nowhere, but you do, with an exception of a couple places, you do catch a town every couple of days. So just making sure you've got water. I think the one thing that caught us off guard was the deserts. The Wyoming Great Basin and the New Mexico desert caught us off guard. Just being from Montana, we're so accustomed to backpacking or riding and having streams available. So if you run out of water, you just go filter some or boil some or however you purify your water. Yeah, we'd never up until then been in a situation where we've not had a water source to draw from. So paying attention to water was big for us.
What are ways that you guys support each other as adventure buddies?
I think that's really big, and I think it's something that we've like really worked on a lot throughout our partnership. One of the things that I love that Josh does for me is he makes me coffee every single morning, which is so nice. Like seriously, it's the nicest thing ever. One thing that I've learned about us is that I'm the kind of person that is always like, don't you think it's kind of warm? I'm an external processor. I'm like, don't you think it's kind of warm out here? Like, did you see that flower over there? Did you see that? And Josh is like not the kind of person that has to like talk about everything he sees. And but I feel like my running commentary is like really helpful and like just keeps us upbeat. So I don't know if that's true, but I think that it's really helpful.
No, that is helpful. You don't want to spend too much time stuck in your own head, so it is good to get it out. No, we split up the chores pretty well. I mean, the nice thing about traveling with other people is you can split up the gear. Like we'll split the tent pieces up, we'll split the food up, and yeah, no, we help each other out. Two's the perfect number, I think.
Back to food. I know we talked about food on last week's show, and in particular Peru, and you said that you got so over those sesame sticks that you can get in Bolduc at the good food store that once you maybe threw them over a cliff. But I'm wondering if you've gone back to that snack because it's so good, or if you have any snacks that you just have to make sure you have on the trail.
So we are really simple eaters, like when it comes to food, and we have like met a lot of people on bike trips that are like really gourmet cooks. I get really hungry when I ride, and like I do not want to wait for dinner. We eat a lot of like those Lipton dinners. Do you know what I mean? Like those things that you get at the grocery store that are like 99 cents, and they're like rice and butter or something like that. I just like want the calories, and I want it to be salty. We eat a lot of instant mashed potatoes. We eat a lot of instant oatmeal. We eat a lot of tortillas and cheese. If we are going through a town, we eat a lot of second breakfasts. We do have to have coffee, but I'm not the kind of person that like spends a lot of time cooking a delicious stew after I've ridden 70 miles. And I do always feel guilty when I see those people as they're like cooking these gourmet meals, but it just takes so long. I just can't stand that time. I just want to be like in my sleeping bag reading. So I do love to have coffee. I do love to have like delicious snacks. I love to have chocolate. I love to have like, beef jerky and stuff like that, like good high protein, salty snacks. But I'm not a gourmet on the road. I just am not.
No, food's never been our strong point. The other thing we use, so we'll have Nutella till we burn out on Nutella, then we'll switch back to peanut butter until we burn out on peanut butter, and then it's back to Nutella, and so that's about as creative as we get.
Yeah. Sarah, you mentioned that part of the reason you like to have a quick dinner is so that you can get in your sleeping bag and read your books. So you obviously travel with books.
Yeah, I do travel with books, and I have traveled before with a Kindle, but sometimes those burn out, and a lot of times where we travel we don't have a lot of chance to like charge things, so I just went back to reading paper books, and then I'll just like either burn them or leave them at a library or something like that. I really love when I'm on a bike trip to read a location specific book. Like in Alaska, I remember I read The Call of the Wild, and that was really fun. When we were in New Mexico, I read a lot of Cormac McCarthy's All the Pretty Horses, all those really southwestern books. It's really fun for me to be in a place and be reading about the place that I'm in. Recently, when we were in Utah, I read a book of letters by this young traveler named Everett Ruiz, and it was really special to me to be reading about the landscape that I was in.
Josh, do you also bring books on trips, or is there something that you like to do in the evening?
I'm not one to read books at the end of the day. Being a boy, I think it's coded somewhere in my DNA that I find a rock and I go throw it in the water. So that's pretty much what I do, is wander around and throw rocks at waters or tree stumps. So that was generally my afternoon.
It was while we were living internationally, about 11 years ago, that Explorer Maps first started, when Chris and his brother Greg decided to join forces and bring the maps to the whole wide world. Hi, this is Vanessa, Chris's wife. Each map is a labour of love, and I am lucky enough to see them all grow step by step, from the early research and planning stages onto a large white piece of paper, through penciling, inking, and finally seeing the real magic happen as Chris adds the colour. As each one reaches the end phase, I get to examine them closely, in the hope that I spot any unfinished bits before Chris sends them off. But there's always new illustrations to see every time. I love going to the Missoula warehouse when we're in Montana to see each unique map on the incredible range of products that Explorer Maps now has. Having lived away from home and families for the past 17 years, our aim of connecting people and place is very poignant to me. And for that reason, my favourite maps are Flathead and the Maasai Mara, because these two places are central to our extended family gatherings and where we have made the best of memories. Which map will you get to help you treasure your own special times? Please be sure to use the promo code Mandela for a discount when you visit explorermaps.com.
Sarah and Josh live here in Missoula, Montana. They've been cycling around the world for the past decade. We've talked to them about many of their trips. Peru, the Pacific coast of Mexico, another huge trip that was over 5,000 miles from Alaska to Mexico. That was a trip that they did before they got married. After they got married, they went to Spain.
So this trip was a little bit of a different kind of trip for us. This was our honeymoon, and we wanted it to be like more laid back. So we rented an Airbnb in Mallorca, and we did day trips from that, and it was pretty sweet and pretty special.
Yeah, this was maybe the furthest departure from anything we'd done up to that point, because not only were we more of had a base camp set up at our apartment in Mallorca, but we rented bikes. Flying bikes overseas is expensive, and so sometimes if you have the opportunity, renting bikes can be a lot cheaper. So we were riding carbon road bikes up and down the road, drinking wine and eating olives, and definitely a much different trip. Showering every day for another thing that we normally didn't do on bike trips. So, no, it was a blast.
Tell us a little bit more about your base camp. Take us there, the sights, the sounds, the smells.
So we were staying in Port de Sóller, which is a port town in Mallorca, and it was a fishing town. So the sights and sounds, tons of fresh seafood. Every day we'd watch the fishermen head off on their boats in the evenings when we were having dinner. After our rides, they'd be coming back and cleaning their catch. And the one tough part about where we were, well, it was gorgeous, mountains everywhere, but to go anywhere, you had to go up those mountains. So the riding was difficult, but absolutely gorgeous.
This was actually luckily my second time to go to Mallorca. I had gotten to go a couple of years earlier. I had written an article for Adventure Cycling, and I'd gotten to go on a trip with Trek Travel. So I really wanted to take Josh there because I knew he would love it. It's a place where cyclists on elite road teams go to train for their season. They like to go in the winter because it's very temperate there, and the hills are really, really steep. So I knew that he would love to go and ride there, because the weather is so nice. It's so beautiful. The hills are so steep and the food is so good. So I was like, Josh will love it. The cycling is amazing and it's the perfect place for our honeymoon.
I just wanted to thank you both so much for making the time to join me here on the Trail Less Traveled for these interviews. I admire you both greatly for what you do. You're inspirational to the community, and I'm so happy that you found each other, adventure buddies who can just continue traveling the world on two wheels. So thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Josh.
Thanks so much for having us. I think you're super inspirational as well. It was really great to get to chat with you.
Yeah, thanks so much. No, this is a great time.
Let's end this show with 3 outdoor adventure tips from each of you.
I would say to try to be as prepared for your trip as you can be. Things will go wrong, so try to just have some things in line. Have some warm clothes, have a warm sleeping bag, and have a first aid kit.
Don't wait. You never know when life's going to happen to you, so when you have the opportunity, seize it.
You won't regret taking an extra day in a beautiful spot, so do it if you want to.
Always go with someone you trust and you know you're going to have a good time with. Makes a world of a difference.
And I said it before, but I'll say it again. You don't need an expensive bike to take a bike tour.
And you don't pass an espresso stand without stopping.
Namaste, Missoula. Mandela here, your host of the Trail Less Traveled, the community's source for adventure and conservation information and inspiration. The show premieres every Sunday night at 6 Mountain Time, streaming live online at trail1033.com. If you missed the premiere, you can find the Trail Less Traveled podcast everywhere podcasts are found. The Trail Less Traveled is dedicated to collecting stories and sounds from the most remote locations around the world in order to bring you, the listener, back to mankind's earliest form of entertainment, storytelling. We are incredibly excited to be collaborating with Explorer Maps, a small family business based in Missoula, Montana. Explorer Maps and the Trail Less Traveled are working together to bring cartography alive through storytelling, conservation, culture, history, and art. Learn more by visiting exploremaps.com. I'd also like to take a moment to thank my friends and sponsors at Big Sky Bikes. The team at Big Sky Bikes have been providing customers with comprehensive solutions for traversing any type of terrain since 2008. Learn more by visiting BigSkyBike.com. That's it for this week's adventure, my friends in Missoula and around the world. But until next week, please remember, living in Missoula is a privilege, and with privilege comes responsibility. Please get informed, get engaged, and speak up on behalf of wildlife and wild places. And if you think you're too small to make a difference, then you've never spent the night with a mosquito. For those who made it to the very end of the podcast and are still listening, I'm going to share with you a little secret.
I've been recording Didgeridoo with a good friend of mine, Steve Saroff, and we are dropping our first single on July 5th. You can support our music by adding this song to your playlist on Spotify or Apple Music. So on July 5th, I invite you to search Mandela van Eerden Didgeridoo River Meditation. Didgeridoo is spelled Didgeridoo. Thanks for your support.